Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Brittany and today I'm going to be responding to the opening round nominees for the GoodReads Fantasy Book Choice Awards of 2022. Before I get started, I just want to say that I know there is some slight controversy surrounding the GoodReads Choice Awards because books are listed up to a certain date and sometimes reviewers feel like there isn't enough time for individuals to read that book and give it an accurate rating when it's released right before the nominee voting round opens. I actually agree with this. I feel like GoodReads should stop books from being listed if they haven't been out for more than a month and then just have them on the subsequent year's list. However, I'm not in charge, so we're just going to go with the GoodReads list. I'm going to share the books with you. I'll probably put them right here. And I'm going to cross off the ones that I haven't read, and we'll talk about the few that I have read. It's not many, and I will tell you why I haven't read that many of them. The first book on the list is The War of Two Queens by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and this is in the From Blood and Ash series. I'm not a fan of this, so I will not be picking it up regardless of it winning because I feel like this series just isn't for me. I read From Blood and Ash either last year or the year before, and in one of my January wrap-ups, I have my feelings listed about that book. Overall, 1 star. The next book on the list is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. I have heard lots of hype surrounding this book. I have not read it yet. However, it seems like a great contender because the BookTube reviewers that I trust their taste on books all seem to enjoy this novel. The next book on this list is A River Enchanted, which I have right here behind me. Sorry, I'm looking into the screen to see exactly where the book is. A River Enchanted is about an individual, the main character has to return to his homeland and team up with someone to figure out why women from their clan are going missing. This book is an adult fantasy debut by Rebecca Ross, and it is said to be like a combination of The Witch's Heart, which is, I think, right there, and The House of Earth and Blood, which is up here. Now, I loved The House of Earth and Blood. Well, okay, so I strongly liked The House of Earth and Blood. I did not super like The Witch's Heart, so I am intrigued to read this book. I haven't read it yet, but I do think things are promising. Overall on GoodReads, it has an over 4-star rating, I think a 4.14, and people seem to really enjoy it. I feel bad because this reaction video is not going to be me having read everything on this list, and while I wish I could have read everything on this list, there was just so much that I wanted to actually catch up on this year that it just wasn't an option. So I will probably follow this up, or at least reference this in a future video when I do finally get to read A River Enchanted. The next book on this list, and the one that I think is the most controversial, is The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. I happen to really like Brandon Sanderson. However, The Lost Metal came out less than 2 weeks ago, and it's already on a GoodReads nominees list. Here's the thing, Brandon Sanderson fans are going to vote for this book regardless. It could have been out 3 hours and people will vote for it. But I don't feel like it has been out long enough for the general public to have a chance to read it. So this is the one that I think shouldn't be on the list because it really has only been a little bit of time from release date to nominee date. And while I do enjoy Brandon Sanderson very much, I feel like this book probably could have been replaced with another book that was released longer ago and had a more balanced list of books to vote for. The Lost Metal is the 5th book in the Second Era Mistborn series. It is a culmination of storylines, and it's supposed to give a really good wrap-up, like a nice ending to the way things have happened in this section of the universe of the Cosmere for Brandon Sanderson fans. I still don't think it's been out long enough to be on the list, but that's just my opinion. The next book on this list is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This was one of my most disappointing books of the year. I went into Babel really excited about it. I got 75% of the way through, and I really thought it was going to be one of my most enjoyed books of the year. And then, I don't know how I can describe this without giving too much away, but at 75% of the way through the book, you reach this climactic stage, and the main character makes a choice that I disagree with. Not on a psychological level, I don't disagree with the choice. I don't think the characterization we've been building for this one individual, for the main character Robin, I don't think his personality suits the choice that was made. That is just my opinion. Several of the people that I watch and tend to agree with their reviews say that this is one of the best books they've ever read. It's a new favorite. It is not a new favorite of mine. Granted, the first 75% of the book I adored. I thought it was wonderfully done. I very much enjoyed the art that was embedded into the magic system of building words. So I could easily see this book winning as a GoodReads Choice Awards winner for fantasy because it was a very beautifully done magic system. In my own personal voting, this was not the winner for the year. The next book that's listed is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. Lives right there. I happen to really enjoy this book. I feel like this might be one of my favorites that she has ever written, and not just because of the ending. Can't say much because I don't want to give it away, but I feel like there was some serious character development put in with the things that happened, and it was one of the more mature books of hers that I've read. As in the writing style. I feel like she has grown as an author from her first book, Throne of Glass, all the way until most recent, being House of Sky and Breath. Of course, some of the characters were annoying. Of course, some of the things that happened seemed a little too convenient. However, I did feel like the twists that were embedded were hinted at perfectly, that if you were paying attention, you could have guessed. And the little threads from other series that were embedded into this book was really well done. I am sure that all Sarah J. Maas fans are going to swarm the voting, and that this will be the one that wins for the year because Sarah J. Maas tends to win when she is in the category. I don't necessarily think that it should be the winner for this year, just because I don't feel like a book should win just because the author is popular. I feel like a book should win if it was an incredible book. And that's really hard to pinpoint because everybody has different taste. So maybe this series will win, or this book will win because it's what's getting people back into reading, or maybe it's the only series somebody has found that they've gravitated to. Or maybe it'll win just because so many people love Sarah J. Maas. Not hating Sarah J. Maas. I enjoy her writing. It's popcorn movie books to me. I just don't think it's the absolute best example of fantasy writing. And I feel like that's a valid criticism. The next book on this list is Thistlefoot by Jenna Rose Nethercott. This book is one that I haven't read, and I haven't read it because I don't connect to the premise. I have zero interest in reading this, and that's okay. I don't have to like every fantasy book that's on the list. In this book, two siblings, Valentine and Isaac, are living separate lives, and they have to come back together because they have inherited a house that runs around on chicken feet. And that, I cannot suspend disbelief long enough to immerse myself into this world, because houses don't run around on chicken feet. And this sounds so stupid for me to have latched onto that being the reason why I'm not going to read it, but some people have really seemed to enjoy it. Some of the reviewers that I also follow have talked about this being a super enjoyable book. It's just not for me. So this will be one of the nominees that I don't actually get around to reading at any point in the future, and it is also one that I don't see winning just because of the other books that are in this category. The next book on this list is Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro. Ordinary Monsters is an almost magical school story where the main character has a skill, and he is brought to a home in London to live with other people that have certain skills, and this group of people with skills are called the Talent. The premise is that the Talents are, quote, haunted by a man made of smoke. I can see this being a little similar to the Diviners in the sense that this group of people has magical abilities, and they are having to fight this otherworldly creature, very similar to exactly what happens in the first book of the Diviners. I have not read this yet, but it is on my list. I do not think, though, that this is going to be one of the winners of Goodreads Choice Awards, because it tends to be that people either really enjoy paranormal books with paranormal monsters, or they do not gravitate to books with paranormal monsters. You either like them or you don't. And based on what the ratings show on Goodreads, I think it's close to a 4. But when you look at other books, especially compared to Sarah J. Maas and Brandon Sanderson, I don't feel like this one has a chance in winning. Not saying that it doesn't deserve to win, just saying that it doesn't have the hype surrounding it that other books do. I do like the aspect that this takes place during a very Victorian time, so maybe a little bit of Shadowhunter vibes to it. And it is one that I definitely want to read in the future. It's just one of those cases of so many books and so little time. The next book on the list, which has gotten a lot of hype on both BookTube and BookTok and Bookstagram, all the book places, is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This book follows a main character who is a witch who has had to keep her powers secret, and she is summoned to a house to train these 3 orphan witches. It is touted as a very cozy book, one that has lots of fall vibes, similar to the Clune books. Oh shoot, what is it called? It's got a house on a cliff. House of on the Cerulean Sea. Very similar to that, except with witches. So I could see this getting a fairly high number of votes. However, I don't see this one winning either. The next book on the list is called When Women Were Dragons, and this book is a fantasy. It is centered around the concept that women used to be dragons, or women were dragons at some point, and then they just stopped. Based on everything else in this category, I also don't see this book winning, because it seems to be a very particular taste. For example, I could see people who enjoyed The Witch's Heart really liking this book, but I don't feel like the audience is as big as some of the other books in this list. The next book on the list is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher, and this is a story of your main character who is basically trying to rescue her sister. Family tie books can be, or books about family ties, I should say, can be polarizing, especially if you don't have such a great relationship with your family. You may not be able to relate to what the characters are going through. While it has gotten rave reviews and so many people enjoy this book, I do not think this one is going to win either. The next book on this list is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is a cozy fantasy surrounding your main character, an orc who has given up the adventuring lifestyle and started a coffee shop. I have not finished Legends and Lattes. However, I hope this is the winner, because not only was it self-published or indie published to begin, it has gotten so much hype, and it is such a wholesome concept and a very open, loving world that I really feel like this is the kind of book more people need to read. And if it wins Goodreads Choice Awards for fantasy, I could really see it getting even more hype. I sincerely hope that this is the winner. I really feel like we need more books from Travis Baldree, because this is such a wholesome read. The next book on the list is The Book Eaters, and I have absolutely no idea what it's about. I have not heard too much about it, and this is going to sound really stupid, but based on the cover, I have no desire to read it. The next book on the list is Fairy Tale by Stephen King. I could see this giving some of the other books in this category a run for their money, because people either really enjoy Stephen King and he has lots and lots of fans, or they're not a huge fan of Stephen King and they probably wouldn't have even read this to begin with. I think that this will probably be one of the books that's ranked fairly highly with the voting system because of the hype surrounding Stephen King. Again, I have not read this book. I actually don't care for Stephen King, so I won't be reading this in the future unless somebody can really convince me in the comments that it's worth it. The next book to be listed is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This is another one that I really don't have any desire to read. And I also feel like this was published before this year, but it could just be that the time between end of 2021 and November 2022 was so packed full of information that my brain just cannot simply fathom that it's been this long. Originally, this one was also, I think, indie published or self-published when it first came out. It got a lot of hype on TikTok, BookTok, and then has been re-released. I myself am not drawn to this book. I could see other readers absolutely loving it, but when I compare it to other books on the list, I also don't think it is one of the standouts. It may be great, it's just probably not going to hold its own against the other things on the list. The next book is a mythological retelling of the story of Elektra. I have it right here. It is by Jennifer Saint, the same person who wrote Ariadne. This is retelling the story of Elektra. Elektra is one of 3 Greek siblings, and she has, like most women in Greek mythology, she has a fairly tragic story. I could see this getting fairly highly ranked because if you enjoy Greek mythology and Greek retellings, this is going to be one of the books that stands out for you. Especially for the hype surrounding Ariadne. I could see Elektra's audience and Ariadne's audience as well, because they're written by the same person, being a similar audience to somebody who would enjoy The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. So I could see this book getting a fair amount of votes on the Goodreads Choice Awards. The next book on this list is Keikai, and while I have seen lots of people really rave about Keikai, I feel like it's not going to get the hype that it deserves. Again, similar vein to these books right here. Keikai is a story about a woman who uses knowledge to gain power and courage and bravery to face the things that are happening in her world, which is also similar to The Witch's Heart. It seems like a lot of the books on this list, I say, are similar to The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek, but it does also then split the audience that I think could be voting for one of the books on this list that's also similar. So it's one of those situations where you have an audience given multiple choices, and even if they like all of the choices, they can only pick one. So the division between the books in this similar category is going to lessen the amount of votes for each one of these books, and then putting them up against such a powerhouse like Brandon Sanderson is almost unfair. The next book on this list is The World We Make by N.K. Jemisin. While I am a huge fan of N.K. Jemison's writing, I think it is lovely, very transportative. It's such an enjoyable type of sci-fi. Editing Brittany popping in just for a second because I ended up deleting a lot of what I said about The World We Make and why I haven't read it, because it's not incredibly relevant. Hi, Booger. Somebody's ready for a walk. So I'm just gonna pop this in here. If you like N.K. Jemisin, and I know a lot of people do, I really think that this book could win. It is not my choice. So yeah, just popping in to finish up what it was that I was saying. The next book on this list is The Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and to be quite frank, I feel like they should be on the YA Fantasy Novel Choice Awards list, because just the synopsis alone makes me feel like this is more of a YA book instead of an adult book, especially when we're comparing everything to Brandon Sanderson and Sarah J. Maas, which their books, especially this series, and even Babel, I feel like these are adult novels. Babel, you could argue, is new adult, but since we do not have a delineation officially of a new adult section of fantasy, I would say that Babel is adult, where something like Shadow and Bone is young adult. I wouldn't put them in the same categories for voting. So The Daughter of the Moon Goddess is about a woman whose quest is to free her mother. And I feel like this is probably more new adult. Everything I've heard about this book, though, it has great reviews. People seem to really enjoy it, so I think it could have potential to stand on its own. I do think if it was in the YA fantasy category, it would have a better chance of winning, because it wouldn't be compared to the other books that are listed here in the adult fantasy category. The last book for adult fantasy nominees is The Golden Enclaves by Naomi Novik. It is the third book in the Scholomance series, and to be honest, I had no idea this was released. I have heard nothing about it. I have seen no reviews on it. I really thought The Last Graduate was the end of the series, and I feel like there's two trains of thought on this series. Either you really love it or you're really disappointed by it. Personally, I have a Naomi Novik book in my read books that I really enjoyed, and I have one in my read books that I really did not care for. The one I did not care for is one that I see people praise all the time, and I did not like it. So I feel like this could go one of two ways. Of course, one of two ways. Either she wins or she doesn't. I do not think this book is going to win. I do feel like the people who love this book will probably vote for it over others because it can be a very enjoyable topic, especially if you like magical schools and fighting the bad guy. I feel like this is going to be one of the ones that you go for. Personally, I have not read this book. The whole Scholomance series is not something that I'm interested in, and I happen to really like Naomi Novik as an author. I listened to all of the audiobooks for Temeraire, and those were so much fun. I liked her retelling of the Napoleonic Wars with dragons. On the other end of that spectrum, I did not care for Spinning Silver. While the synopsis of this book could be really engaging for somebody who enjoys this series, it's not for me, and therefore will not be getting my vote. So to wrap up this video, here's a picture of all of the nominees. Ignore my hand, it's a little purple because I just put some fresh color on my hair, which it's drying, that's why it looks like this. The nominees that I don't think will win have been X'd out. The nominees that I think will get the most votes have been given green check marks. And the nominee that I think will end up winning is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. My vote, however, as I've already said, goes to Legends and Lattes because I think this is such a wonderful, wholesome world, and we need more of it. Thank you so much for joining me in this video today. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are. Who do you think will win? Do you agree with what I said about certain books? Do you disagree? Why? Why not? Some of the books that I haven't read on this list, do you think I should give them a try? And just let me know what your prediction is for this year. Have a good day, everyone, and happy reading.